Okay, so this is part two of the first live, the learning analysis journal. So the processing section. So watching all four of these students and again, adapting this back to the sort of broader concepts that we were talking about, that we've been talking about in the class. So like the zone of proximal development is a big one. And watching these students that sort of know what they need to do, and then getting them to actually do it. So with Braden, he likes doing it, and he's really, again, he's very dismissive of criticism and like social interaction. He very much thinks that he like has a lot of this figured out. And getting to be able to get him to share his work or getting to want to criticize somebody else in that work, and constructively criticize, I mean, is can be very difficult. It's again because he's easy to dismiss these things that he sometimes finds these projects not worthwhile. And then that kind of bridges into Nick, who definitely doesn't feel like these things are worthwhile at all. He doesn't really know why he has to read these dumb short stories that have no moral or no sort of critical value to the things that are important to him. Even though it's the story about this boy and Sheila Matt is really all about what does it mean to be true to yourself, and what are the things that are important to you, and should you be, I don't know, pining after somebody who doesn't really care about the things that you want to read or that you're interested in, excuse me. For Malin, again, because she's a pretty easy student to work with, she kind of acts as like a control in this whole situation where if you can kind of get Malin to do something, you can generally realize that you're probably doing okay. You maybe need to differentiate a little bit more in the way that you either scaffold a project or explain or set up expectations for students. And then there's Lexi, who doesn't really want to ask questions because she doesn't really want to share her work at all. And doesn't even, when it comes to the end, she'll just kind of be like, I hope this is good enough, and then we'll maybe talk about it later. In terms of like an emotional response to these, just in my own personal, experience, I find that just like learning all about these students in this way is heartwarming. To first off, it's really rewarding, and it's cool to be able to connect with these students in that way. I think about how with Nick as a football player, I wasn't really involved in sports a whole lot. I swam when I was in high school, and as I've told that to certain students, I oftentimes get the, well, swimming wasn't a real sport. And I think about how it was super important to me, and it was kind of one of the ways that I met a lot of my friends in high school, and a lot of the ways that I actually felt really good about myself. And so just trying to think about what that means to me, and obviously as one of the adults in the classroom, not letting that get to me, but also at the same time when I'd be like, no, it was a real sport. Like, I went to state in it, and I swam year round to like make sure that I got to state and like do the preparation for that work and do what I needed to on top of trying to maintain my grades, so that if I did go to state, I could actually swim and participate. And then how could I actually like expand that to, how could I expand, or how could I help grow the swim team and help other people enjoy what I enjoyed on it? Things that I maybe didn't necessarily think about when I was in high school, but I really look back at now, and I'm kind of like, yeah, this was a great thing. And then I think about Braden and how he doesn't really like things unless it's his way, and doesn't really want to learn other learning styles or learning preferences, or be social in those interactions. I really think that between those four students, Braden, Lexi, Malin, and Nick, that they kind of run a lot of the different sort of profiles, if you will, in school, and the ways that there's just it really, when it comes down to like this sort of multiple intelligences theory, and that's something that again has stuck with me, that it takes all different types to make a community, and to make a successful classroom, and we learn so much from just the way that everybody in that room processes experiences, from the main classroom teacher, her name is Miss Peck, to myself, who for a lot of students I know I'm just like another white tall guy just standing in the corner sometimes, or at least sometimes that's what it feels like if I'm not actively helping out or just listening to Miss Peck teach her class. To the different students that are in there. It's a mostly white class, I will say that. But there's a student, Ken, who is African American. He's awesome. He definitely brings. There have been a couple times in class where he's brought up his experience reading about certain things where he's just like, this has never really applied to me. He hasn't really said that out loud, but in terms of one-on-one conversations, it's cool to get that perspective because it's one that I would never ever know.